Auditorium in Lansdowne. This is Voice Voter. After all, you decide. Let's welcome on stage VOC presenter and tonight's moderator, Shafiq Morton.
And good evening, Mulwani, and welcome to the Voice of the Cape debate. As has been said in the introduction, this is being regarded as one of the most critical general elections in the 25 years of our democracy. And what we are going to be doing tonight is we're having the great debate of the political parties who will be not only on the national landscape, but on the local as well in the Western Cape. Earlier today, I read somewhere that somebody said in terms of African politics that anger should be our civic duty. So that is something we need to have in the back of our minds. This is a democracy. We are allowed our feelings. But we have to obey the norms of good behavior and respect in terms of debate. What is interesting? Very good, thank you. Is that 27 million people have registered in this election. But what is of concern to us is that there have not very many young people registering. There's something wrong. Why are the youth this evening? We hope to answer some of these questions. Very quickly, how are we going to run things? The first part of the show, I'm going to ask each to say, who am I? But there's a bit of a trick to this, and we'll get to that later. Second part of the show, we address challenges that we face in South Africa. There are many. We all know what they are. The third part is when you, the audience, can address your questions to our politicians on stage, who I'll introduce shortly. If you're listening to us from home, you can also watch us on the Facebook page, streaming live as well. This is also being recorded for a television as well later broadcast. But it's 072-238-0712 is the WhatsApp line. If you still use a thing called SMS, 47913. If you have any questions you'd like to pose to our guests later on in the show, feel free to do that. They will be communicated to me on stage. But before I introduce our guests, I think we all acknowledge that the level of political discourse in the last 8 or so years hasn't been very energizing, innovating, or stimulating. It's gone to the lowest denominator. But let me just ask some questions about each political party, just because I can, before I introduce our guests. We've got the ANC here, first of all, this evening, and we have to ask ourselves, does ANC stand for another national crisis, or is the question, who is up, Ace or Cyril? Then we go to the DA. Does it stand for Dramatic or Dear Makar Alliance? And what about that handshake with Netanyahu? EFF, does it mean everything for free? Or is it government in waiting? Or is it waiting on the government? Then we have the NFP. Is Inkatha too heavy to be my brother? Then we have the Good Party. Okay, it's all good, but where's the bad and where's the ugly? Then we've got Al Jamaa. Al who? Is Al Jamaa telling me I must make my prayers on time? Which boerewors I must eat? I don't know. Before I introduce our guests, let's have a look at the state of play. Polls are not agreeing on who are the front runners. On the national scale, ANC 61, one poll. Another poll, 49%. Western Cape Provincial Chair and ANC candidate for the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Then we've got Zaid Badalroon, the Democratic Alliance. He's also the mayoral committee member for Community Services and Health. We've got Bernard Joseph from the Economic Freedom Fighters. We've got Brett Heron, Good Party Secretary General. Then we've got Ahmed Manzoor Sheikh Imam. Thank you, Rent-A-Crowd. National Freedom Party MP and Western Cape Premier candidate. Then we've got Hanif Hendricks, leader of the Jamaa Party. Okay, gentlemen, and are any ladies here?
No,
All gentlemen,
no.
all right. So we're going to have to talk about gender later on. Right, the first part of the show, each candidate is going to be given 3 minutes to say, who am I as a political party? But here lies the rub. In that 3 minutes, you are not allowed to refer to another political party in those 3 minutes. You're not allowed to criticize another political party because we want to know who are you, and you have to say, who am I? Right, in no particular order, I'm just going to I'm tossing things up in the air, and I'm going to start off with the last person I read out, Hanif Hendricks, leader of the Jamaa Party. The clock is ticking. 3 minutes. Who am I?
Assalamu alaikum. Jamaa was formed 12 years ago to get more Muslims to play an active role in the political life of the country, because we found that the Muslims who were in opposition parties and who were in the ruling parties just could not deliver on behalf of the Muslim community. Not that we only wanted them to serve the Muslim community, but something very simple to get legal consequences for Muslim marriages they could not achieve, although they occupied the position of Member of Parliament, Cabinet Minister, Chief Justice, and even acting President over 25 years. If a Muslim dies as a result, and there was a nikah, is dead. And when a Muslim child is born, the child is illegitimate, so our dignity is harmed from the cradle to the grave. So over the years, the party has grown. 1/3 of our members are outside the faith. 1/3 of our councillors are outside the faith. 1/3 of our NEC members are outside the faith. And many young students have joined the party from all 9 provinces, and we have a very strong learner command. So although it's a Muslim party, it embraces all communities, and that's why Jamaa means community, and it means Ubuntu. So we now have 9 councillors and a deputy mayor, and we have on the radar seats in Parliament and in the provinces. So our focus is getting students to improve their education and to get roofs over their schools, because even in Cape Town there are schools without any roofs. So it is something that we are very concerned about. And we were campaigning in Mitchell's Plain, and 2 of our campaigners told me that they came across these 2 schools and there were no roofs, and the children's math teacher didn't pitch. So I told them, stop the campaigning and teach them how to count. I then joined them, and these 11-year-olds couldn't say the 3 times table. So we have a big problem in education, and that's what we want to address, inshallah. We are addressing the environment for the youth, because all over South Africa, but the Western Cape is worse, we find that the officials, not the politicians, the officials are dumping poorly treated sewage into rivers and waterways. And they are chemically poisoning our rivers, with the result that our shorelines are affected. And if you go to Cork Bay and you buy a snoek and you test the snoek, I guarantee you'll find that 1/3 of the snoek is diseased. So we have a problem that we need to protect the environment. So our political party, there are 83 criteria you have to meet in order to be a politically environment-friendly party. And alhamdulillah, we've made headway. We have got orders against officials from the Green Scorpions and the Blue Scorpions, and we're taking them on in court, and we hope to jail them because they are chemically poisoning our rivers and they pumping raw sewage into the rivers. So that means the African child must live in sewage, must play in sewage, must eat in sewage, and must also pray in sewage, and that is completely unacceptable to the party.
Hanif Hendricks, unfortunately, your 3 minutes is up. And okay, that message there, obviously a lot of environment, some green coming into the Al Jamaa party. I'm now going to go to the right side of the stage, and seeing I started with somebody sitting in the middle. Somebody sitting in the middle on the right-hand side, Mr. Bernard Joseph from the EFF. Sir, you've got 3 minutes, and the clock is going tick-tock.
The name is Bernard Joseph. I'm a member of the provincial legislature. I must add, outgoing member of the provincial legislature. There are 6 areas that I would like to cover just to assist the audience to follow me in terms of the discussion. The 6 areas is the issue about land. Secondly, the issue of crime that is very close to the hearts of the people of the Western Cape. The issue of unemployment, especially for our youth, gender-based violence and corruption. Then the last point that will be close to the community of the area where we are is our support for the Palestine cause. So I would like to go through. In terms of the land, we believe that land should be equally distributed to the people of our country in order for us to build proper housing, and not the RDP housing that the government is building currently. Those of us that is living in the RDP houses will understand. If you sit in the kitchen to eat or cook food, you can even get the smells out of the toilet next door. Is it then proper that we have such type of housing? The issue pertaining to food security, it must be distributed that we can be able to grow food that can make us economically viable. In terms of crime, currently the Western Cape government, national government, without mentioning any names, are not able to deal with crime in the province as well as nationally. In our province, 9 of the high crime rating policing areas is in our province. If we are not able to deal with crime in our province and in the country, it will lead to a situation where we will not be able to attract investors into our province. And if we are not able to attract investors, we will not be able to provide jobs for our children. So these issues becomes very important. It will further lead to the issue of poverty in our areas. And due to poverty, people get involved in crime because they only wants to provide for their families. And I understand a mother of children will never allow her kids to go hungry because she feels the pain. In terms of unemployment, as I've indicated during the crime issues as well as the land issues, if we are not able to deal with these issues, that unemployment becomes the center point of attraction. That's why EFF is promoting the issue pertaining to education in our different areas. The issue about basic education, the issue about ECDs, so that at the very early stage we can develop certain skills levels in terms of reading and writing with our children. The fact that our children are not able to read and write, it makes it difficult at the later stage for them to progress. And somewhere in the
sorry,
middle...
Mr. Bernard Joseph, your 3 minutes is up.
Can I just close down?
Just close your sentence. I feel
Like I'm a speaker in Parliament, but please close your sentence. I will recognize you, don't worry.
If we are not able to deal with these matters, we will get to a situation where we will have challenges pertaining to kids that is falling by the wayside during the education system, especially around the basic education. Where's the kids that have disappeared?
Thank you very much.
Between the
That's two
surface
sentences,
to
thank
the
you.
sentences.
All right. I'm now going to go to the left side of the building of the stage, and I'm going to ask Mr. Ahmed Manzoor Sheikh Imam, National Freedom Party MP and Western Cape Premier candidate, 3 minutes to say, who am I?
Assalamu alaikum and very good evening to all our listeners out there and our guests in the gallery. Let me start off by saying the National Freedom Party was born on the 12th of February 2011. And a few months later we went into an election, and of course we did exceptionally well, having acquired 227 councillors, mayors, speakers, deputy mayors, winning 5 municipalities outright, winning the Zululand district municipality. And in 19 other municipalities, we were co-governing because there was no outright winner. While governing, the National Freedom Party governed exceptionally well, with a zero tolerance to corruption in terms of delivery of services. In those particular areas, I think we've done exceptionally well, particularly when it comes to housing, water, and those issues. Unfortunately, in 2016, which due to what we believe was sabotage, we were not able to register for the election, and that has had a devastating effect on the party. However, we've come back with a bang. The National Freedom Party is now contesting all 9 provinces. For the first time in the previous elections, we've contested 7 provinces. We've made a lot of ground, particularly in areas like the Western Cape, where people are disgruntled with the services that they've been getting over a period of time. Now, having been a member of Parliament for the last 5 years, part of being members of different oversight committees, we've identified a whole lot of weaknesses. And when we've identified those weaknesses, but we also gave solutions to them, and that's what we've been doing. In terms of the corruption in the country, which we know is at a very high level, but I must add that the corruption that we know and what we read or what we watch on the media is very little or nothing. It's 10 times worse than that. It is estimated that we lose over 200 billion rand in South Africa annually just by not getting value for services. The issue, so the National Freedom Party is calling for a more inclusive government with an absolute separation from politics and administration. Some may argue that that is where it is at the moment, but in practice, clearly it is not the case. ESCOM is one ideal example of interference from political parties and politicians, which results in the level of corruption and mismanagement that we have today. In terms of infrastructure development, the National Freedom Party is very, very clear that yes, indeed, what has been happening in the country, while the emphasis have been on infrastructure development, but there's been great underspending, but over and above that, what is important, we believe that you should be using local products, create industries so that those goods that you use regularly on a daily basis should be manufactured not only for local consumption, but also for export. So it's a win-win situation from both sides in terms of that. As far as education is concerned, we are not satisfied with converting mud schools into brick schools. I think the emphasis must be on quality education, not on a 30% pass rate to get the numbers, but rather make sure that we are competitive in the labor market throughout the world. And clearly at this stage, even Africa does not want to accept South Africans doctors if you go there. If you talk about the issue of crime, we believe there needs to be a more holistic approach. If you look at the living conditions of people, the high unemployment rate, the poor housing, if you look at the water, the sanitation, the drug, the substance abuse and things, if you don't deal with these things holistically, we believe that you can't deal with the issue of the crime, because it is not the responsibility of the South African police services to actually deal with crime. Actually, their responsibility is to prevent crime, but clearly they're not able to do that. We've been very vociferous about the Palestine issue. We've done it again and again. We've put in motions, we've put in billboards, we've put the government under pressure, and we now have a motion that is going to be tabled in the 6th Parliament calling for the downgrading of the South African embassy in Palestine to a liaison officer. And we've been very, very vocal about that. In terms of land, we have a serious problem in terms of current land, prime land, particularly if you look at the Western Cape and things, which is being sold to foreigners. And prime land, when I say taking into consideration there's 575,000 people on the waiting list in terms of
Mr.
housing.
Imam, it's time, unfortunately.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Almost copying the EFF on your educational policies. Let's cross to the other side of the room. I'm going to go to the right hand, so not the right wing, but to Mohammed Khalid Sayed, ANC Youth League Western Cape Provincial Chair and ANC candidate for the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, I'm I'm very grateful to be on this program and to be back at my old school, Islamia College. In a sense, this is where it all started. We were born in the year 1912 as the African National Congress, born and established in a church in Mangaung. The ANC was established by leaders of the African people, leaders who had a vision to liberate this country from racism and from colonialism. The ANC was successful in that regard, based on the values of the Freedom Charter. The ANC program of action for governing South Africa was also based on, again, liberating our people, transforming this country, to ensure that the legacy of apartheid is dealt with in terms of the material conditions. So our vision as the African National Congress for South Africa and the Western Cape is a united one, a truly united one. But we believe that one can only have a truly united South Africa and a united Western Cape. And I want to emphasize Western Cape because Western Cape currently is one of the most divided provinces in the country. If we are able to unite the Western Cape, we'll be a symbol to the rest of the country in terms of what can be done. But it's a unity. For the ANC, it's a unity that ought to be based on ensuring that the legacy of apartheid is truly dealt with. So that, for example, all communities can be safe. All communities can have access to the economy, to jobs. All communities can have access to free, quality education, for example. All communities can participate in this democracy. As the ANC, we've made many strides in the past 25 years of our democracy. We've made strides in terms of the economy. Much more people, those who were previously disadvantaged, have now got access to the economy. For example, over 1.2 million jobs are created every year. That's the reality of the ANC governance. More people have got access to water and electricity. More people have got access to basic education. Free higher education is now also a reality. Also what we've got is crime. Crime has reduced. In the Western Cape, when the ANC governed the Western Cape, we had the lowest crime figures in the province. When the ANC governed the Western Cape, we had the lowest unemployment rate in the province. When we governed the Western Cape, we also had the fastest growing economy, and we've got facts for that. We don't just thumb suck and speak rhetoric. We've got facts. We've got a realistic plan for this country, a plan that has worked, notwithstanding the challenges. When we've had challenges, we've been honest about it, we've reflected on those challenges, and now we've got a president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who led this country at a time when we were on the brink of civil war and brought our country together with the drafting of the new constitution. We've got an organization in the ANC that is able to navigate through a complex reality and a complex environment in this country and globally. At the moment, our economy is looking better than what it was 2 years ago. We've even got like the ratings agencies, for example, that are saying that a decisive ANC victory, Standard & Poor's is saying, The Economist is saying, even though we don't base ourselves on them, but the liberal narrative, those who want to oppose us, have been basing things on those agencies. Even they are saying that a decisive ANC victory will be good for South Africa and will be good for the African continent. Thank you very much.
Right. In fact, you've got a 10-second discount. I'm going to cross now to my left-hand side, the party whose color reminds me of vitamin C. Brett Heron, who is the Secretary General of the Good Party, uppercase.
Thank you, Shafiq. Well, vitamin C is very good for you, so that's a good analogy to make. The Good movement is a new political movement. We were formed on the 2nd of December, so by the time we contest the elections, we would have only just turned 5 months old. And what we've achieved in the last 5 months has been really astounding, and we're very encouraged by the people who have responded to our call. We have made a call on good people of our country to join us, to restore hope and patriotism for our country and its future. And Shafiq, you mentioned yourself how many people are feeling disillusioned with politics and politicians, and that's because the old parties have truly failed us in their roles as political parties and as government. We as a political movement have zero tolerance for racism, zero tolerance for gender discrimination, zero tolerance for corruption, and we cannot live with the high levels of poverty that we see in our country. Our policies and our manifesto are based on 4 very easy to grasp themes. The first one is spatial justice, and this is about redressing the apartheid spatial plan. The pillar of apartheid was separating us based on race and space, and we put it front and center of our policy and manifesto that we want to tackle the spatial injustice in our country, and you can go anywhere in this country and you'll find evidence of it, of the apartheid plan still in place. And this plan gives people an unequal or inequitable access to jobs, to housing, to land, and to transport, and so we want to tackle spatial justice. Okay. We also want to tackle economic justice, and this is about creating the conditions in our country that are conducive to attracting investment, growing business, and creating jobs. But not just creating jobs that are meaningful and give people a decent quality of life. And what we're seeing around the country, and even in the Western Cape, outside of the city of Cape Town, is growing inequality. So you can have economic growth, but you can also have growing inequality. We need growth that is inclusive. Our third policy theme is social justice. This is about equitable treatment of all people. And this is where we say gender bias, racism, and unfair privilege must end in South Africa. There is no place for unfair or unearned privilege in our country. And then our fourth policy pillar or theme is around environmental justice. And for those of us who have lived through the last 2 years in Cape Town, we know that climate change is real, and it is up to cities and towns to implement the changes that are needed in order to tackle carbon emissions and to tackle the climate change challenge that our country has. National governments sign these agreements, they go to these big conferences, they sign agreements, but they don't get to implement the solutions that will tackle climate change and the changing environment that we live in. So we have 4 policy themes: spatial justice, social justice, economic justice, and environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got a 3-second discount. I'm going to go to our final speaker in the first round. An apology, I gave him the wrong name. So there's no Zaid Badroun standing for the DA, Zaid Badruddin. Apologies for that. He represents the Blue People, the DA, Democratic Alliance Mayoral Committee Member for Community Services and Health. Zaid, your 3 minutes starts now.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Molweni to everybody here today. So we've been asked to share who we are, and it's a simple message. The Democratic Alliance is a party that prides itself on 4 values. And you ask any one of our members, we will be able to tell you. Okay. Freedom, fairness, opportunity, and diversity. So ours is a party that is animated by the hope of our people as a country. Ours is a party that is animated by the great potential of our country, but also the beauty and prosperity of our land. But at the same time, we are very mindful of the fact that the democracy that was promised to us as a nation is a democracy that has not been delivered yet. And on the ground and in our communities, we know that crime is rising, that corruption is oppressing us, and that there is no fair access to jobs. And our national government has become complacent and only focused on enriching themselves. I want to share with you a story of Thabo, who I met in Limpopo. And this is a young gentleman who, on a daily basis, would go to bed, who'd wake up in the morning, would try and switch on electricity with no electricity going on, would open his fridge with food having gone off because the fridge has no electricity, and when he leaves his home, he's unable to find a job. And this is the reality that South Africans find themselves in today. The DA's message is simple. We believe in change that builds one South Africa for all. And to this effect, the DA's message is simple. The DA's message is simple.
Okay,
we
order,
believe in
order. I
building
feel like I'm in
one South
Parliament.
Africa
Thank you.
for all. Ours is a 5-point plan. Eliminate corruption and state capture.
Oh my God, corruption.
Create an honest professional police service that protects and serves our people, that creates fair access to real and long-term jobs, not EPWP jobs that our governments across the country count as jobs, to secure our borders, but also, very importantly, to speed up basic service delivery. And so we believe in 3 basic messages if we consider our 5 promises. We believe in a job in every home, so those who can work must work, so that they're able to provide for their families. We believe in creating a strong opposition to realize a real tangible, who can deliver on a real tangible difference in our communities. But at the same time, we believe in offering our country a real tangible difference by a party that has a proven track record as a good government, And to this effect, 19.8% decrease in unemployment, 213 housing opportunities, 91.5% of households have access to quality healthcare services within 30 minutes of where they live. And to end off,
Thank
the
you.
municipal
Thank you.
financials.
Order. Thank you.
And to end off.
Please allow the speaker to finish.
And to end off, the Municipal Financial Stability Index has been clear that the best run municipalities in our country is run by the DA. Of the top 20 municipalities, 12 of them are run by the DA. And there's no guess as to who runs the 20 worst municipalities. We will leave that for a later part of our discussion.
Right, thank you. Time. All right, thank you, Rent-A-Crowd. You are busy listening to the Voice of the Cape, Great Cape Debate. 91.3, also streaming live on Facebook. We are crossing to the Salt River Studios for a quick commercial break, 2 minutes, and we are back with the second half of the show when we are going to have a look at economy and unemployment, where our guests will be addressing those issues. So hang in for 2 minutes. We'll be back right after this.
The voice of Mr. Shafiq Morton, our host for this evening from the VOC Great Cape Debate, talking to various political parties, 6 in actual fact. We're going to go for a break. And thereafter, when we come back, we'll continue. Of course, this live video stream is sponsored in memory of all of those who died for our freedom. And also, we would like to say the views expressed in this program did not necessarily reflect the views of the Voice of the Cape, its management or staff. For now, we cross to our Salt River Studios.
They even copy the ANC songs. Ignorant.
91.3 FM stereo, the voice of the Cape, coming to you live from the VOC Great Cape Debate, and that's at the Islamia Auditorium in Lansdowne this evening. 6 political parties on the stage, all sharing their vision for a South Africa post 2019 elections. And of course, this live video stream that's coming to you on Facebook, if you tuned in on there, or on YouTube, is sponsored in memory of all of those who died for our freedom, and as I have it here. And then also the views expressed in this program, political, personal, do not necessarily reflect the views of the Voice of the Cape, its management or staff.
Live from Islamia Auditorium in Lansdowne, this is Voice of the Cape's Great Cape Debate.
And welcome back to the Voice of the Cape, Great Cape Debate. Thank you for all the singing. Let's just settle down a bit. Grips. With the second half of this debate coming to you live, 91.3, and of course streaming to you live on Facebook, and also being recorded for ITV later on. This part of the show, we're going to be talking about the economy and unemployment. And there are a significant amount of young people in the audience here this evening. We also have some young politicians on stage. And I don't have to tell any South African that unemployment amongst the youth is one of our most pressing problems. When you look at the statistics for the youth unemployed, it goes to almost 40%. So I'm going to start off the first question. I'm going to ask Mohammed Khalid Sayed of the ANC, as a young person, how do you feel about the situation as a young person in terms of employment and in terms of the economy? And does your party have any real, concrete solutions, any answers to one of our country's most pressing problems, which is in fact reinvigorating the economy and de facto creating employment? 3 minutes again.
Thank you very much. We've noted the challenges. I think even as young people inside of the ANC, the youth unemployment issue has been something that we've been raising. Over the past 3 years, as the ANC Youth League inside and even through the National Youth Development Agency, we've tried to identify, at least in the public sector, what are the barriers to youth employment. And one of those barriers that we've picked up is the criteria of 5 years of experience for entry-level jobs in the public sector. And it's also there in the private sector. We successfully lobbied and championed that the 5 years of experience as a criteria for jobs in the public sector, entry-level jobs, be scrapped. And we saw towards the end of last year, President Ramaphosa announced that now as government policy. Ours is now to ensure that the private sector also champions that. So that's one of the things that we've achieved in that regard, and it's also noted some of the challenges. We've also recognized that we inherited an economy in this country that was orientated towards one particular racial group. It was not benefiting the majority of South Africans. So the challenge was immense. But even within that context, as I said earlier, if you take the net amount of jobs created since the advent of democracy till today, notwithstanding some of the challenges in the past few years, or the past 9 years, you would see that we've made significant progress. 1.2 million jobs a year is quite good. It's quite positive. So that's in that regard. With regards to the recent occurrences, we've just secured now, President Ramaphosa has just secured 290 billion rand from the private sector to be invested into the country. Yes, he's the president, the president that's trusted by the majority of South Africans. So we've ensured, and the private sector has got the confidence. The private sector has got the confidence, particularly globally, global private sector and local has got the
They come to
confidence
the Western Cape.
that the ANC is able to create an environment that's conducive to job creation.
Definitely.
Ours is also to ensure that the private sector puts enough set-asides in place for young people to enter the job market. That's one of the other things we've done. If I look at the Western Cape, let me localize it a bit as I conclude. If I look at the Western Cape, we've had a situation that through the Industrial Development Agency or corporation, they've generated 7.1 billion over the past 5 years to create jobs in film, farming, and infrastructure projects. National government has also declared Saldanha Bay as an industrial development zone, which has ensured that there's more jobs created in the West Coast, for
Mohammed Khalid,
example.
unfortunately,
We're
your
hoping for
time
that
has
to move
ended.
and to
Thank you.
continue. I don't want to go into tit for tat and
Thank
respond.
you.
As you've
All
seen,
right.
I've not
Time,
attacked the day at
time,
all.
time.
Ours is about the African National
Right,
Congress.
time. Thank you. I'm now going to go. Thank you very much. Okay, order. Thank you. I can't throw anybody out the house. I feel powerless. All right, I'm going to go to somebody who's a little bit older than Mohammed Khalid, Hanif Hendricks of the Al Jamaa party, to give us his vision for the next 3 minutes in terms of the economy and how do we redress unemployment.
I was redeployed by my party to go to Parliament, if you vote for me, to take further the work I did in the corporate sector. In 2002, I got an award as a pioneer of the internet for creating next generation jobs. So we created not only 2,000 completely new jobs in the country, we also identified the revenue streams. Like
So I can just ask you a question. Did you do that as Al Jamaa or as Hanif Hendricks?
as Hanif Hendricks, and that's why Al Jamaa is sending me to Parliament to use those skills and that knowledge in Parliament to create jobs for the country. Does that answer your question?
You've answered my question.
Thank you very much. So the party has identified me to go to Parliament, and my aim is to create the next generation jobs when it comes to the new wave that is hitting the world, which is the cyber civilization. Don't talk to me about the fourth industrial revolution. That is gone and past, right? We are talking about the cyber civilization where 5G, neuro-linguistic programming, and artificial intelligence has the potential to create thousands and thousands of jobs, just like the internet has created. I talked about the revenue streams, and for the presenter, for his knowledge, Mail and Guardian Online, I started it. I recruited the people, and it's still going very well. And now we've got new Media 24. That is what we started. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of opportunities if we can convince the South African Parliament to invest in the cyber civilization, and when they look at jobs, to look at it in terms of that particular scenario and not the short-sightedness that we are listening here this evening. So as we then went to visit Indonesia to identify the model they are using to give jobs to the poorest of the poor in Indonesia, we were amazed to know that 6 million women got jobs and thriving small businesses. So we went on a study tour with 20 postdoctoral students to understand how it works. So we approached government with that model, and together with it, we talked about an interest-free state bank. And government came back to us to tell us, look, that's not going to work in South Africa. There has to be at least 3% interest. So we walked away from that because we couldn't support any model that has an interest factor to it. But inshallah, we hope that we will be able to use our talents that we had in the corporate world to create next generation jobs, using 5G and the opportunities of the cyber civilization. These are new terms that you may not have heard before, but we are a bit back. South Africa is always a few years back, and we hope that we will create the geniuses that we've created during the internet. We'll also now create when we move into the cyber civilization. So I have a lot of hope that we need to. The problem at the moment is that the data for rich people, poor people pay 10 times what rich people pay for data. And data gives you access to opportunities, to research, to look for jobs, to look for business opportunities. So our position will be that 5G, for example, must be free to every South African so that we can be on the same footing to access the job opportunities for the cyber civilization.
Right, thank you very much. I'm now going to cross to this other part of the stage, Mr. Bernard Joseph, EFF. I know your manifesto, 170 pages, a long read, but from that, can you redact to us what is the EFF going to do about unemployment and the economy?
Those that are saying in the audience today, nothing. The land is the economy, and the economy is the land. It's important for us to distribute our land in a responsible manner, to ensure that we expropriate it where relevant to its rightful owners. Now, as EFF, we will do that, exactly that. Why it's important that we can address the issue pertaining to food security, that we can address the issues pertaining to housing. These are the issues. Now, this government of this province have never addressed the issue pertaining to District 6. It have never addressed the issue pertaining to Stellenbosch, while the white people in Stellenbosch are encroaching on state land. However, the Stellenbosch municipality of the blue wave are failing our people in that regard. If our people occupy land for basic housing, they are being evicted with a court order immediately. Why didn't they get a court order to ensure that those people in Stellenbosch, close to Jonkershoek, that is called Lovers Lane or whatever is the name area, why didn't they address the issue there to ensure that we can get people away from that stolen land? They say the nice English word, English is not my first command, but if you understand encroachment, it's indirectly theft. Now these things we have addressed and we are still addressing it. We need to address these issues so that our people can get the equal share of the land in terms of equal distribution. Now, to get the jobs, it's a natural thing. In this province, in terms of the land, do you know that gold was discovered, when gold was discovered in the ou PVV gebied? Do you know that diamonds were discovered in Tembaletu area? What have happened with these issues? Do you know in Grabouw, these resources pertaining to paint, to make paint, was discovered in Grabouw, in the mountains there? Do you know that oil was discovered in the Beaufortberg area in the Swartberge? These are the issues. If we are taking the share of our land and hand it over to the government, we would then be able to address these issues.
Okay, Mr. Joseph, thank you. Time. Thank you very much. So far, we've had, thank you very much. We've had cyber civilization, issues of land, and the president regenerating the economy. I'm now going to cross to vitamin C, red heron, from the good party to say, what is your vision in terms of unemployment? What is your vision in terms of regenerating our economy? So far, we've had piecemeal arguments. Altogether, they're coherent, but let's see what you make of it.
Sure, let me start by saying that to address unemployment and the economy is a complex matter. And it is shameful for a party to be using ad agency slogans like a job in every home, because it is a false promise created by an ad agency, and it's meaningless. So we have to start with what are the barriers to employment, and the starting point is an economy that is growing too slow and a skills mismatch. We have young people who do not have the skills that the changing economy of South Africa requires. And so we need to look at the skills mismatch and the slow economic growth. Government's role is to create an environment and to create the conditions that will attract business, that will create the jobs that we need in our country. And those conditions are really quite simple. It starts with a stable electricity supply. So you cannot have Eskom switching the lights on and off because they haven't got enough coal or they've run out of diesel. We need a stable energy supply, and business is looking for a stable energy supply. You need internet connection. You need basic services. You need a trustworthy government. You need good governance. And again, I'm going to take issue with Zahid's earlier comment that the DA municipalities are the best run in the country, because actually Cape Town was the best run city in that Africa ratings, and that was under the leadership of Patricia de Lille, because that's the year. But the worst run city in the country was Johannesburg, also under the DA government. So it's not true that the DA is just this glorious government in waiting. We need skills and we need policy certainty. 90% of the jobs in the Western Cape were created in the city of Cape Town under the leadership of Patricia de Lille. This did not happen by accident, it happened by design. When she arrived at the city, she said, there's no economic growth strategy, we need one. And she said, you can't just have an economic growth strategy because that will just increase inequality. At the same time, you need a social development strategy so that economic growth is inclusive and that people are getting jobs out of this economic growth. So you need a stable environment, you need an economic growth strategy or an industrial strategy where we're matching the skills that we have with the industries that can absorb those skills. And then we need to be looking at education, because people who are leaving school now need to be able to participate in the future economy. But to absorb those people who are unemployed now, we need a different kind of industrial strategy. Thank you.
Right. What I got from that, as somebody from the media, it's quite refreshing to see the advertising industry being blamed rather than the media. I like that. Let's move to the DA, Zaid Badruddin. The blowtorch is now on you. 3 minutes.
Shukran, Shafiq. So I want to start with the reality on the ground. And some time ago, a few years ago, when I had started working in Lower Crossroads, I had walked the streets in that community, and I had perhaps very naively asked some of the young people in the community what it was that they do or what their employment is.
Hang on a minute. Thank you. Hello. The DA is not getting the last. Hello. Thank you very much. The DA is not getting the last word in this thing. We still have one more speaker to go. Thank you. Right, let's have some order.
Jamaa, guys.
Right, thank you.
Jamaa.
Thank you very much.
Aslan.
Right, thank you. The debate, members of the audience, you'll have your chance later on. I'll place it on the record. The DA isn't going last. The NFP still has to have their turn. I'm mixing and matching, and everybody has an equal chance on this platform, although you don't seem to think so. Saad, you can carry on, please.
Shukran. So as I was saying, when I started working in Lower Crossroads, the reality on the ground is eye-opening. When you speak to young people and you ask them what is their job, what kind of work do they do, and they tell you that they're in location management, and those will know here, location management, it means that there is unemployment that has not yet affected or reached all of our communities. So whilst we have a ruling party that notes the challenges, that tries and addresses the challenges internally, and whilst we have an orange party that tries and copies and pastes the DA's policy in terms of the economy by way of putting businesses first, in terms of generating jobs, we as the DA have a policy that has been proven to work within our province. So ours is simple.
Like EPWPs, failed EPWPs.
Ours is simple. Ours is simple. So whilst it is suggested, that this is false promises, under a DA government, these won't be false promises. So we as a DA government, when in national government, have committed to establishing a voluntary national service, which allows for 1 year of an income and skills development for all school leavers. Also at the same time as we do at the moment in our
like
province.
you're implementing in the Western Cape. Yeah.
As we do in our province, we have job centers. We would implement job centers.
Right, audience, please, thank you. This is a democracy, and I think everybody should be given a fair chance to be heard. Thank you. Just let him finish, please.
We would implement job centers throughout the country that allows for information sharing, advice, and free internet, as we offer currently in all of our libraries across the city. We'd also allow for growing small business opportunities by increasing funding assistance and by removing the blockage and the red tape, which we have done very well in the city of Cape Town.
So unfortunately,
if we consider this
Only in the white part of the city. Yeah.
That's not 3 minutes with all the shouting. That's not 3 minutes.
Right, we've had several timeouts, and according to my watch, it's 3 minutes.
Have you been pausing?
I have been pausing. I'm a referee. Right, I'm going to go to the NFP. Mr. Imam, you've got 3 minutes from now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think let me start off by saying it seems like both my colleagues from the DA and from the Good Party, either they don't live on this planet or they don't know what is basically going on. Because I can tell you that in the Western Cape, where 53% of the women are colored, only under 6% of them hold managerial positions in the Western Cape. And if the Good Party says under Patricia, they've created 90 or 92% jobs, then it clearly means that with the 92% jobs that you've created, under 6% were given to colored women.
The renter crowd is leaving now.
So it's really create a problem. But let me come back to the issue of it. Now, one of the problems...
The taxis are leaving.
Right, thank you. Please allow the speaker a chance to speak.
here but they're home. The agencies that pay over there.
Thank you.
Can I continue?
The idea of a debate is where the people involved in the debate are actually heard. Thank you.
If you talk about creating jobs, particularly in the Western Cape, since we are talking about the Western Cape, I'd like my colleagues to tell me how much of land in the Western Cape is available for small-scale farmers in order to promote agriculture. Very little or nothing, because it is still in the hands of a few major farm owners in the Western Cape. That's the first thing. And I think I've alluded to earlier on where, in terms of the colored population in the Western Cape, under 6% of them, women, hold managerial positions in the Western Cape. That's the next thing I want to talk about. Now, one of the problems we've identified in terms of the education, which I've alluded to earlier on, is the quality of education. There is also no coordination between the TVET colleges and the curriculum or the skills needs of the country. As a result, what we find is that these TVET colleges are providing curriculum based on the expertise or capacity that they have rather than the skills and needs of the country. And that is why you find that there's a shortage of skills in certain fields and then there's an abundance in the other field. So clearly there is no balance in terms of that. But the other issue is in terms of small business, because it is not government's responsibility to create jobs. It's government's responsibility to create job creators or create a conducive environment to create jobs. And that we believe is through small businesses. But with the red tape that exists and the fact that small businesses cannot access those fundings and the skills and the resources, it is becoming a major issue, and that is why small businesses, particularly in the Western Cape, cannot thrive. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the other provinces, but it's a serious problem, particularly in the Western Cape. Now, if you talk about job creation, how are you going to create jobs when almost everything you want to import into the country? And that is why, as the NFP, we are saying, let's have a balance. No more surcharges and levies. Let's stop the imports of certain goods. Like if you take the Western Cape had one of the most vibrant manufacturing industries in the leather and the textile industry. But today it's gone to the dogs. Why? Because everything is being imported and we have a serious problem with them. But very importantly, we spoke earlier on about the infrastructure development. Now, we as the NFP have spoken to trade and industry. We have spoken to the relevant water and sanitation and things. So listen, if you want to ensure that infrastructure development in South Africa, and yes, it can create lots and lots of jobs and build economy, but by virtue of the fact that most of those goods, and what is happening, contractors are sitting. They've got the contracts, they have no money to even bring the material because it comes from China, India, and America. So we said, why don't you create those? Sorry?
Just one more sentence, then it's
okay.
time.
Why not create industries so that we can manufacture local? Because manufacturing industries is the job creators. Government is talking about creating 200,000 jobs. There's 500,000 people entering the job market every year.
Right, thank you very much. That ends the second part of the show. If you are listening or watching at home, if you have any questions for our panelists, we're going to bring them up later. 072-238-0712, that's the WhatsApp number. They'll be brought to me on stage. 47913, if you are still part of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, that's the SMS number. You are listening to the Voice of the Cape Great Debate. We are going to take a quick break at the studio in Salt River. After that, when we come back, we are going to have a look at another sticky issue, land, capital letters, and housing, capital letters. Stay with us. We'll be back just after this.
What happened? They went away.
Shafiq, I'm sure there wasn't 3 minutes.
.3 FM stereo, the voice of the Cape. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Of course, coming to you from the VOC, the Great Cape Debate at the Islam Auditorium in Lansdowne. And we have 6 political parties on the stage, the EFF, the Good Party, Democratic Alliance, the ANC, also the NFP, or the National Freedom Party, and the Jamaa Party tonight, answering questions earlier on, speaking about education, speaking about unemployment. And the next segment will focus on land. Those questions will be posed to all of the panelists, 3 minutes to answer all of those. But for now, we cross live to the stage.
Live from Islamia Auditorium in Lansdowne, this is Voice of the Cape's Great Cape Debate.
And welcome back to the Voice of the Cape Great Debate, coming to your auditorium. 91.3 is the frequency. Also streaming live on Facebook, recording for television. And if you have any questions, 072-238-0712. That's the WhatsApp line, SMS 47913. Parties in the auditorium, ANC, Jamaa, NFP, EFF, Good Party, and the DA. I'm sure you know that already. This particular session, we're going to talk about land and housing. The next session, crime, corruption, and state capture. After that, where the floor is open to questions from the audience, from the public, from our listeners, and from our viewers. But on the very pressing question of land and housing, I think we all agree that land is one of the central arguments, one of the central pillars of this particular election. And in no particular order, we're not here to favor any political party. It's a platform for the political parties and for the public. I'm going to ask Mr. Bernard Joseph from the EFF, 3 minutes again, your take on land and on housing. How is the EFF going to solve the problem?
In terms of our policy, and I've already articulated in the first position, because it's quite clear that all the challenges is centered around the particular issues in terms of land. The land, and I repeat it again, is very central to the policies of the EFF. If we look what is happening in the Palestine currently, where an illegitimate state have taken the land of the Palestine people, and these issues. And today, I have seen in the newspaper, the leader of one of the biggest political parties in the Western Cape in terms of the blue wave, Musi Maimane, was in a very close-up picture with the Prime Minister of the Israelis. Now, it's not the first time that they are conducting themselves in that way. He even went to Palestine, to Israel, to do exactly that. Now I have listened earlier on to the person on my left-hand side when he spoke about downgrading of the
South African Embassy.
South African Embassy.
Now, I don't know what is downgrading, but let me stop it there. Let me move. We need to address the issue.
It goes from
pertaining-
5 stars to 1 star.
Yeah. we need to address the issue of housing, looking at the design and development of these houses, where people or family members are not able to sit around the table as in the olden days, where they are engaging and where you can engage your kids of what was the challenges for the day at school and in the surrounding communities. The spaces in our houses is of such poor structure, 4x4s, Ahmad. When you stand in your room, you are not able to move to the next room because there's no room. I was in Zoar. If you stand in the house inside, you see the toilet, you see the lightning coming through the houses. These are the issues that we need to address. We need to ensure that we design proper housing for our people and ensure that it gets the relevant attention. Currently, we are failing our people in that regard. I thank you.
Right, I'm going to cross to the NFP, Mr. Imam. Your take on housing
And land.
of course, on the issue of land. Your party actually comes, some of it from KZN, where it's a huge question, but what about the Western Cape?
Well, let me first of all start off by saying that amendment to Section 25 was not entirely necessary because the Act does provide for expropriation without compensation with processes that you needed to follow in any case. But I think what government has been saying is this will accelerate it. We were not convinced, but for the purposes of ensuring that land restitution is accelerated, we have supported it. But let us start off by saying, particularly the Western Cape, the Northern Cape, and a very great percentage of the Eastern Cape. If you want to talk about restitution of land, then start and talk about the Khoisan community. Because that is the first indigenous nation of South Africa, and the land must be returned to the Khoisan. Now, whether it's opportunistic or not, I don't know, but I know government has made an announcement that they want to test Section 25 in the Drakensberg Paarl area with 2,000 sites. And as the NFP, we are saying, if that's what you want to do, we will support it. But start with the Khoi and San because rightfully the land belongs to them. And that's not open for discussion. I just want to take my colleague from the EFF out of his misery in terms of the issue of Palestine and the downgrading. Downgrading is the first step in many to bring sanctions against the Israeli government to comply and return the land to the South African government. I want to remind us all here that it is the Israeli government which is supported by the DA and who fund the DA in any event, okay, who attempted and broke all sanctions when sanctions were imposed against the apartheid government so that we could be liberated. It was Israel that had been colluding with the apartheid government. And they continue to collude today because they want control for what they have lost in South Africa. And that's the problem in terms of the Zionists and the DA. You can't separate them. They are one family. They are united. There is no doubt about it. You know, the DA continuously talks about corruption. But Netanyahu has got hundreds of charges against him for corruption, fraud, theft, and everything. But my money goes and hugs him and goes there to go and get his bill. So where is your principles and where's your values? So let us practice what we preach in any case. But in terms of housing, very quickly, the NFP for 5 years have been pushing. Government does not have the capacity to build houses for everybody. And let us not listen to the lies of the DA and Patricia de Lille when she was in the city. They built very few houses for the people, 62 in 5 years. But let me tell you, the NFP gave a solution: provide fully service site, create a state bank, provide a loan at a very low interest rate, so people will pay 200 rand a month but have a decent home, rather than encouraging what is the city. And Patricia did this too,
thank you.
with backyard dwellers and
Minutes
things.
is up.
We don't want to encourage, so that will give decent homes to our
Thank
people
you very
and
much.
dignity there.
Right, I'm going to ask Mr. Hendricks from the Al Jamaa party. Right, thank you, Peanut Gallery. I'm just going to ask Mr. Hendricks to give us his views, the Al Jamaa's vision in terms of land and in terms of housing.
As far as the Freedom Charter is concerned, we know that the Freedom Charter says that the land belongs to everyone who lives in it. However, the PAC, that is the reason why the PAC broke from the ANC, because they could not agree with the Freedom Charter because they felt that how can the land belong to people who stole it? So that's the difference between the PAC and the ANC. If you didn't know it, you know it now. This is what Mrs. Abukwe told me just before she died, because we're doing a book on her husband. So what is Al Jamaa's position as far as the land is concerned? We don't agree with the EFF, for example, and the ANC actually is trying to bluff everyone. They don't really want to expropriate the land without compensation. But the EFF is very serious, but we disagree with them. We feel that there should rather be reparations must be paid by those who benefited from getting cheap land, who stole the land, and all the accusations that we are hearing here. Reparations is the way to go, because when there is such conflict, I'm referring to the atrocities that happened during the past 2 world wars. Germany and Japan had to pay reparations. The theft of land from the people who own the land is as serious and as horrendous as that. And that's why a better option would be that they must pay reparations. And that is where I will rest my case.
No, you are wrong.
Right, reparations. I'm now going to proceed to Mr. Zaid Badruddin from the DA to give us the DA's vision of land and housing.
Okay, shukran. So it's non-negotiable that the land that is in South Africa belongs to all South Africans.
So why don't you give it
And
then to
we
the
as
concern?
well, let me get there. I will get there. And we will continue to fight for the protection and the expansion of individual property rights for all. So it is a non-negotiable that in order to address the apartheid injustices, more black South Africans need to be able to and must own land that they live on, and to have access to the opportunities that the property ownership protects and provides. Where the question of how, one needs to be able to consider the parcels of land that
question time will be later. Thank you.
One needs to consider the parcels of land that are left vacant across the country, and as a party, we are saying we need to be able to utilize these government-owned lands for housing opportunities. The land reform promoted by other parties and the corruption coalition next to me seeks to create an endless cohort of tenants, of renters, when the DA is a party that says we need to promote land ownership. And so there are 2 principles here.
Thank you.
There
Please,
are 2
silence.
principles
Thank
here.
you.
Guaranteed private property
order.
rights, and to promote land reform that grows jobs, that expands ownership and the economy, and that enables economic justice. And so the question then becomes, how do we do this? And it's not simple enough to say we're going to give land, because land exists in urban and agricultural environments. So in an urban environment, the DA is in an effort to redress the injustices of our past. Property ownership is a basic human right. So in order to address the injustice of our past in an urban environment, property ownership is a right.
Thank you very much. The idea of debate. Thank you. Thank you. You are allowed to have your disagreements, but I think we have to dignify the occasion by at least allowing the speakers to finish. I'm going to insist on that.
And so I'm addressing it in
Thank you.
So one must consider urban land reform and agricultural land reform. In terms of urban land reform, property ownership is a non-negotiable and is a basic human right. And we as a government have delivered over 100,000 title deeds to residents within this province. A title deed allows you to own your house, to sell your house, and to pass it on to your children once.
Thank you. Let him finish, please.
In terms of agricultural land reform, this is the issue that I think is the most contentious, because it's not simply good enough to say give the land away. Go to Mpumalanga. I invite you to go to Mpumalanga and to speak to the residents in those provinces who ask, what must I do with this land? So we are saying support emerging farmers. We are saying that in the Western Cape, we have shown that through the land reform audit, and the commodity approach and the shared equity approach, that 72% of our efforts to address land reform have been successful, because we're not simply as a party giving over land. We're saying, here is the land, but this is how we are able to assist you in managing the lands in order to make sure that you are able to live a better life as a citizen in this country.
Okay, time, unfortunately.
So land reform, if I can, Shafiq, is a must, and it must be used as a tool for economic development, and it's not good enough to simply say expropriate. There's no need to change the constitution when the constitution is already good enough as agreed to under the ANC president at the moment.
Thank you very much. We need to proceed to the next speaker. The DA speaker is actually finished. Thank you.
We're speaking
right,
about
he's
land.
finished. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next speaker. I'm going to go to the Good Party, Mr. Brett Heron, to talk about the Good Party's visions in terms of land and in terms of housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Shafiq, let me start with land. And I mean, we have to acknowledge as a country that land restitution and redistribution has failed. Agricultural land, we have 1% of agricultural land in black ownership and 7% of urban land in black ownership. So there's been a failure to redistribute land, and the restitution program has also been a complete failure. And that's a failure of government, not a failure of the Constitution. I mean, if you look at District 6, it stands as a monument to forced removals and to the Group Areas Act. 25 years post-democracy. Those people, the beneficiaries, most of them have passed away before they ever saw their restitution claim resolved. So that is an absolute failure of government. We do not believe that the Constitution needed changing. The Constitution provides for expropriation, and it provides the conditions under which you can expropriate without paying compensation. And the ANC participated in this EFF political theater, but they actually proved this point themselves. Their Minister of Public Works published in December a bill that amends the Expropriation Act to allow for expropriation without compensation under the current Constitution. So we don't need a constitutional amendment, and we didn't need this political theater that we've endured for the last 18 months. When it comes to housing, we say where people live matters. We need to fast-track delivery, and you can fast-track delivery if you have political will to do so and the structures in place to do it. The 1 year that I was responsible for housing before I resigned, we not only, for the first time in Cape Town's history, met our housing target, we doubled it. We doubled the delivery of housing in one financial year by putting in place the right structure and by having the political will. Then I just want to say to Zahid, it also matters how people live. And you don't need to go to Limpopo to find families who are living without electricity. Go to Delft. Just go to Delft. You have provided 800 houses there in the last 4 months where people are living without electricity and where they're going to live without electricity until June next year. That is a failure of your government.
Houses you built.
Houses you built.
Houses you built as you make a member.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much.
We've put electricity in there now.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to proceed to the next speaker. All right, thank you. I'm going to proceed now to the ANC.
Pambili, DA, Pambili. Thank you.
All right, everybody feeling better? Okay, let's go to the next speaker. Mohammed Khalid Sayed, the ANC's vision in the Western Cape in terms of land and in terms of housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our vision for land, firstly in the Western Cape, is born out of our vision for land nationally. Let me start off first on the point of departure to indicate that the DA has exposed itself this evening. It's exposed itself in terms of its approach to land reform, in that it has amplified the words of our former president Nelson Mandela, when he said that the Democratic Alliance is a party of white bosses and black stooges.
And so how have we shown this now?
Because the DA, and this is why the DA is able to be the first political party to oppose the ANC and government, to oppose the NFP and the EFF and others when we want to downgrade the South African embassy. It's the first party to come out against that. Because it is insensitive towards the oppression that our people have suffered as a result of land dispossession.
Because they oppress
it does not recognize that land is a central element of people's dignity. So that's at the first level. At the second level, let me also indicate that many of the solutions presented by fellow political parties over here have been solutions to land reform that the ANC has been implementing. However, one of the solutions that one of the approaches that we did not yet implement has been expropriation of land without compensation. So I want to add that expropriation of land without compensation is an additional measure to our only one approach. Also, the kind of land that's going to be expropriated, it's private land that's not being utilized. So, for example, here in the Western Cape, we've got the DA wanting to evict people, for example, in Hermanus, the poor white community there in Paradise Park. When we come into government in the province, we will expropriate that line so that those people cannot be evicted and that their houses can be built there. Secondly, we will also ensure that government-owned land, and here in the Western Cape, if a land audit is done, in fact, land audits have been done, you'll find that provincial government owns a large amount of land that is being underutilized, in fact, not used. We will ensure that that land is used for housing, it's used for productive purposes. Recently, a month ago, President Ramaphosa handed over farms to black people whom it originally belonged to in the West Coast. That's been handed over. Premier Zille actually supported that initiative. She spoke at that event. Because it also encapsulates as well, and it includes the training of those people to be farmers, to be productive farmers. So ours is a multi-pronged approach to land reform. And it includes the Khoi community. It includes, and I think it's time, I don't like this approach. We're in a new South Africa. For the Khoisan to view itself as separate to black South Africans. We are black South Africans. Indian, colored, Khoi, we are black South Africans. In terms of housing delivery, the African National Congress delivered 22,000 houses per year, while the DA has only delivered 11,000 housing opportunities in the Western Cape. When it speaks about housing, it's housing opportunities, and those are inhumane housing opportunities where people have to be subjected to the bucket system. It is because they don't care about our people, because those are black people. Hence they support the Zionist state of Israel, because they don't care about the dignity of vulnerable people.
You must representing and misleading.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to introduce a new rule. If the speakers, thank you. Thank you very much. If speakers go over their time, I will give them a discount for the next round. So it's time now to take a quick break to go to Salt River. You are listening to the Voice of the Cape Great Debate. People in the house, ANC, Jamaa, NFP, EFF, the Good Party, and the DA. When we come back after the ad break, we are going to be discussing crime, corruption, and state capture. And on that very noisy note, time to go back to Salt River, back right after this.
No. Our provincial statistics. Provincial statistics, and Bernard will agree, was in government at the time. Those are provincial statistics, the 22,000 a year. It was when we governed the province, which is 11,000 a year in terms of housing opportunities. Those are from your officials there. Yeah. I don't want to reveal my sources in every settlement. What's happening?
Het eet nie oor my wat.
That's like the annual report. Look at the annual reports from 2009 up until last year. You'll see it from this annual report. Yes.
What question have you got for this house?
Yep, coming to you live from the Islamic Auditorium in Lansdowne, the VOC Great Cape Debate, 6 parties on the stage, telling us why you should vote for them come 8th of May. And of course, once again, we want to say the views expressed in this program did not necessarily reflect the views of the Voice of the Cape, its management or staff. We now cross back to the stage.
Live from Islamia Auditorium in Lansdowne, this is Voice of the Cape's Great Cape Debate.
And welcome back to the Cape Great on VOC Voice of the Cape, 91.3, streaming live on Facebook. And of course, we are starting to come to the second half of our show. We've decided